So I'm back. I took a break on Sunday because I can't Twitch. Well, I can Twitch every day, but I choose not to. Um, and I'm back again. Tonight I'm going to do just a really quick reading of another chapter. That just kind of circle back. I'm currently, yes, I am doing a read through of a manuscript. It's my first read through, so I don't know what to expect, and hence the highlighter. So I'll be editing as I go. It's a journey for both of us here. It's called Talisman of the Winds, and it's about an ox goater who has to deliver a talisman to a family and his adventures. That's what I'm getting so far. For all I know, that could just be the beginning part of it and it goes into something else. I'm not sure, but that's what I have so far. I'm currently on chapter 5, and I will begin reading now. Chapter 5, Browhound's Waste. Browhound's Waste. Fierce flying pig guts, thought glowered at the sight before him. The southerly road had dwindled into a trail, a path, and then a mere game track, which finished up on a slough's edge. Reeds waved in a smelly green coated water, and further out, a few ducks swam around, and now and then bobbed their heads down for food below the surface. Black, bloody destroyer's teeth. What are you doing to me, wizard? He knew, of course, that no wizard's magic had caused the trail to peter out. His own stubbornness had pushed him to make a trail simply because it led somewhere other than Wensaskos. He considered refilling his skin with water here, but a slough like this was not a safe place for water, unless, of course, one had a fresh water talisman, such as most caravan masters carried on long trips. All of this called to his mind the thing he carried under his shirt. Well, for certain it was no fresh water talisman, nor even a fire starter. Whatever it was, he had no idea how to make it work. All this was futile mind-wandering. In this waste, he didn't want to waste cutting off across country, so he had to go back and forth in the trail, and take the one that least seemed to lead towards Wensaskos. With any luck at all, there'd be another division in the road, somewhere further on, that would allow him to head southward. The dead man had been a half-breed, though able to pass as a Wentz with a touch of hair coloring. The dark roots gave him away at close range, but most of his head had not been visible until the dark cap had been lost in his death struggles. His nondescript clothing, gray, brown, and faded green, helped him to avoid standing out. Only an attempt to open a door, worded by one of Dr. Gobnash's talismans, had killed him, and that painfully. Your methods are a little final, Doctor. I'd have preferred to have been able to question him about who he is and why he's spying here. The slender doctor considered for a moment. There is a thing I wish to try sometime, Highness. Compelling a spirit. It requires the previous owner of the spirit to be newly dead. If you would bid a servant or two to fetch some things from my workroom. The king made a gesture, and 2 servants stepped forward. Clearly they feared the king just a little more than they feared the doctor. He ignored their reluctance, merely rattled off a list of apparatus and jars he wished them to bring. When they had gone, the king asked, "Will you compel the spirit of that piece of trash to speak to you?" The doctor shook his head. A spirit, no matter how fresh, seldom is able to communicate in words. I will set out some symbols. By pointing at one or another, the spirit will answer my questions. And if none of the symbols represents anything like the correct answer, most likely it will then stand, doing nothing. I see. This is likely to be a lengthy process then. Indeed. Do you wish to go back to your chamber and have me call you when it is done? No, I will stay, at least for a time. Shortly, the two very nervous servitors carried in the items they had been sent for. One of the objects was a brazier, and under the doctor's instructions they set it up and lit a charcoal fire. They set a small brass pot atop the brazier, and when it was hot the doctor took some seeds from a jar and tossed them in, then breathed deeply on the resultant smoke. Then on the coals next to the pot he poured 2 careful measures of powder, one from each of the 2 jars. As columns of smoke, one green and one blue, began to rise, he nodded approval. In a high falsetto, he began to chant. The 2 columns continued to rise, but now they twisted around each other, though they did not mix at all. As a twisted cord of smoke rose higher, the chant went on. Then the smoke began to bend over, reaching down to touch the dead man. When the twisted cord of smoke had been in contact with the dead man for some time, Dr. Gobnash stopped chanting and shouted a single word. Sehish. No, not meow. Sorry, cat. For a long time, nothing happened. Then a green shimmer showed over the dead man. The shimmer increased until finally it rose and very slowly took the form of the dead man. The doctor set out 2 pale ivory chips with strange glyphs painted on their faces. Still speaking in an unknown language, he indicated these and spoke to the spirit. He was obviously explaining the process he intended to go through, because from time to time he would point a hand to the symbols, indicating them both separately and together at various points of his talk. Finally, the doctor asked his first question. The spirit, after a short pause, pointed at one symbol. The doctor spoke again, and the wizard pointed once more at the same symbol. So it went. It was a boring process, but Narnash, having declared his desire to watch, was not about to change his mind. Besides, if he left, there would be rumors going around about how even Narnash had run away when the nasty little doctor got down to business. In fact, aside from the eldritch notion of a man's spirit being questioned after death, there's nothing exciting about it at all. The doctor would ask his intelligible questions and the spirit would point, now at one symbol, now at the other. Then, with no warning at all, the spirit's form began to waver, and within moments it had passed. The doctor stood for a time, breathing deeply, as one who had undergone intense effort. Even the king, though anxious to discover what had been found out, had no desire to rush someone who could not only kill, but deprive a spirit of rest after death. Finally, just as the king's forefinger was tapping on his thigh, the only visible sign of fidgetiness he ever showed, the only visible sign of fidgetiness he ever showed, Dr. Gobnash turned. His pupils had shrunk to small dark spots, and there was no expression on his face. As he spoke, clearly it is a trick that takes some learning. As you may have guessed, I could only ask yes or no. I have a notion to make things easier another time. However, for the moment, the man who hired this one was of Wentz, and he was hired from here in the capital. This does not, of course, preclude the both of them ultimately working for some other foreign paymaster, merely that the immediate paymaster for this man was local. He only knows that he is to meet someone who hired him tomorrow in the Blue Loon Inn. With yes or no answers, you could determine the exact place? Protested Narnish. with a fairly supercilious. Oh my goodness. Nope. Nope. I can read the word just fine. Words. They're hard today. I'm working on it. I ascertained that there was to be a meeting, and that the meeting was tomorrow. I established it was to be at an inn. Then I asked if the inn were in the northeast corner or otherwise. The inn in the wow, okay, that's an actual spelling problem. The inn if the inn were in the northeast corner or otherwise, or if the inn were in the southeast quarter or otherwise, at which point I was fortunate. I went by landmarks, establishing by which common landmark it was closest to, then ascertaining which street it was on. And while I have not memorized the inns of the city, the specified area allowed for only 2 inns. I knew of the Blue Loon Inn, so I asked, and he answered yes. Were you able to gather any description of the man? The doctor shrugged. Medium height, medium build, no remarkable features. A perfect spy, in other words. He wore a green jacket and a leather cap. You've done well, Doctor. And I hesitate to carp. I suppose we could go to the Blue Loon tomorrow and arrest every man wearing a leather cap and green jacket. The doctor took no umbrage. As I said, the procedure was new to me. I did what I could. A mere dead corpse could scarce give even that much information, no matter what torments you put to it. Lucy frowned at the figure who stood. It appeared just on the edge of the mountain range. Come on, you stubborn, batten ox driver! Find a path through the mountains and come this way. She snapped the locket closed, then snickered to herself for getting into such a temper over someone she didn't even know. Thakal was worn down and vexed. All right, magician, I'm going. Are you happy? Black bloody destroyer's teeth. Rivers and spate, forests full of roots that grab my feet and trip me. Bare plain and with rocks that suddenly leap up and bash my toes. I suppose the next thing will be a rain of lizards across my path? All right, to Wensaskos we go. And the sooner I get rid of this morker-eaten thing, the better. The captain looked around at the common room. The common room had suddenly gone silent. Nothing to get their attention like a squad of King's Guards. I'd wager everyone here has something on their conscience. Most of it'll be petty stuff, though. If they think for a minute, they'll realize that swindling someone in a horse deal wouldn't call for the guards. He was looking for a plain fellow wearing a green jacket and a leather cap. Should be enough if the fellow was there. Nobody but the upper-ups could afford more than one set of clothing. Well, just about everybody was wearing a leather cap. 2 wore green jackets, but another pair had cloaks on, making it impossible to tell at a glance what they had on for jackets. He turned to his file leader. Everybody, the leather cap and green jacket, get them over by the wall there. Make sure you look under their cloaks. Sir! He watched as the squad carried out his orders. Well, the 2 of the green jacket and leather cap showing, of the two with the green jacket and leather cap showing, one was well over 6 feet. The other may well have matched the report, save for the nasty-looking scar down his left cheek, starting below the eye and running down to hide his beard. Well, he'd been told no scars or distinguishing marks. Of the 2 cloak wearers, two of the cloak wearers also had green jackets and were average size. The captain had been in the king's service long enough that he didn't hesitate. Take those 2 for questioning. One of them promptly started jabbering lines of, I haven't done anything. Morker, Morker, eat me if I have. The captain took this to be a likely sign he'd been up to something. The other maintained a sullen silence. Of the several of those left showed obvious relief, which probably meant they had something to hide. He wouldn't be thanked for arresting anybody he thought might have done something, not unless those were his direct orders. Wouldn't thank me then either. Just ask, "You're sure you didn't let anyone get away?" And depending on who asked it. He couldn't answer back as he'd like to. The king, for instance, or that Dr. Gobnash in his sand-colored robes and little black cap. He went up to the innkeeper. We keep getting reports about rebels, spies, and seditionists meeting here. You'd best off reporting all suspicious characters. The innkeeper was stocky, stolid, and stubborn. I report every suspicious character I have. I'll have a constant stream of... If I report every suspicious character, I'll have a constant stream of messengers heading to the palace. The captain merely stared at him without speaking. The innkeeper wasn't up to staring back, so after a moment he muttered, "All right, I'll do what I can." The captain rapped his baton of office on the counter. "Do better than that." Then, without giving the man time to argue, he turned. "This place is closed for the night, by order of the king. Everyone out." The patrons filed out, trying hard not to look like people glad to have escaped the kind of questioning that awaited the two prisoners. Outside, the man with the scar moved off, not making any particular hurry, but not hanging around either. He'd been afraid this might happen, which is why he'd worn the disguise. His agent had died, and died before being able to give much more than a vague description. Well, he'd have to try somewhere else. He had already had some prospects in mind. Thockel found himself on what looked to be like a well-worn path leading up into the mountains, which showed a reddish strata along their rocky sides. The mountains didn't look notably high, but it would be tougher going higher up. He hadn't lacked for water, and though the ox goad wasn't intended for a missile, he'd already brought down a rabbit and later a quail, so he wouldn't lack food. At least for a while. He looked up the path and continued walking. The captain was seated easy in his saddle. Plain, worn armor and weapons, tanned and weathered face. His men sat a little apart, under a green oak in the palace courtyard. "He appears to be coming up Dunthorn Pass," Lucy said. "Meet him if you can, and bring him back here. He's a guest, not an enemy, so don't make any trouble. If for some reason he refuses to come with you, don't press the matter. Just come back and let me know." "Yes, lady." Taharon was one of her most trusted and able men. He wouldn't push the fellow into anything, but she had to make the order explicit. Taharon nodded his round bearded head once. With a quick hand gesture, he gathered his troop, and they were away. "The man I warned you of, the ox driver, is crossing over the mountains through Dunthorn Pass." The king considered. "Have you thought of some way of getting there and dealing with him?" "Instantaneous, long-distance travel is not one of my talents, I fear." So it isn't likely that we could head him off, no matter how quickly we travel?" "Very unlikely, of course." Very unlikely. Of course, there are certain indications that he either has no idea where he's going, or that he's reluctant to go there. A fast-moving cavalry troop might just catch him before he reaches his destination. And yet, Ascos is a wild place, so far west. How could our men have any idea where to go? that is a very small difficulty, a problem within the abilities of most hedge wizards. Summon your force, Highness, and I will have an item for the commander to take. Hamildash was reached down gingerly from the saddle to take what the magician had offered. It was a small polished marble sphere with white with black streaks, and strung on a chain. This will not bite you, Commander. It has no power save the slight enchantment of finding that I've put on it. Yes, sir. Hamildash was not reassured. And how does it work? He was not convinced of the little sphere's benignity, but the king had commanded him to take it, and he was not going to go against Bloody Narnish. It is a simple device requiring repetition of no charms or the like. It is sensitized to the man you seek, and the range is about a day's ride. You hold it up by the chain, and if the base of it becomes red, that is the direction you go. You hold it up by the chain, and if the base of it becomes red, that is the direction you have to go. Also, the redder it becomes, the nearer you are. This also will serve to reveal the man to you, should he have taken on a disguise. If you ride past a man who doesn't seem to resemble the fellow you seek, and the ball begins to glow fiercely red on the side facing him, that is the man you seek. I wouldn't bother checking it until you are well into Ascos. Now, off with you. Sir! Hamildash led his force out. Sir! Hamildash led his force out, a full 300 cavalry, all wearing Narnash's crown bearer token. No telling what one might meet up with in Ascos. The people for sure were not friendly, and a large force should just prevent any outright shows of hostility. The troops, well-trained men, rode in silence. What noise was made came from creaking leather, horse hooves clattering on stone. No hostility in Ascos was not something he feared. The slingers practiced their evolutions, advancing, retreating, wheeling right, wheeling left, all the maneuvers they might be expected to need on the battlefield. At some point during each maneuver, the slingers practiced their evolutions, advancing, retreating, wheeling right, wheeling left, all the maneuvers they might be expected to need on the battlefield. At some point during each maneuver, a whistle would sound, at which they would all cast stones at phalanx-shaped target. Most of the slingers were small-statured. All were lithe and moved nimbly. Most of them are Ascos, Falsedon observed. Yes, we get good slingers from the interior. But you said that most Ascos weren't worth training. Ah, good, his father said approvingly. Don't take anyone's word for something if you can see for yourself. But you remember the context in which I had said that? Falsedon wrinkled his brow. We were speaking of the green striped phalanx and their commander, who was a half-breed. Yes, and we were speaking particularly of the phalanx. It's different from those of the slingers, for instance. The slingers have to maintain some formation, and the more complex evolutions they can manage, the better. The phalanx, however, though they do need to be able to do the maneuver, require mostly the ability to stand firm and strong on the battlefield. They need to be that rock that anchors the line while the cavalry look for an opening to make the finishing attack. For that sturdiness, you need the blood of Wentz. I see. Bright leaves flapping. Dalthorio was beyond peeved into outright anger. So you sent your people to bring the ox drover in. Why was I not informed? Are my people not to be trusted to play guide and bodyguard to this foreigner? No slight was meant to you or your people, Dalthorio. It was only that I saw an immediate need and knew that arranging a meeting with you would take time we may not have. So I sent my own people. And you will notice I took care to tell you about it as the first item in this meeting. And I wonder which of you people made it their business to tell you beforehand. Dalthorio was not mollified. If we're going to work together, lady, I require more trust of you. Dalthorio, you are trusted, and you are vital to this task. But it is to you the talisman is coming, remember? You will be wielding it in our service and leading our troops when we fight against Bloody Narnish. I simply saw a need to act to bring the messenger safely to you, and I took action. It was meant as no slight to you, only an aid. She could tell, though, even as they prepared to leave, that Dalthorio had not been mollified. Wardash grant that he cooled down over time. Okay, so that is the end of this chapter.